Boom. Welcome back, everybody, to Philosophy for the People. We're here again with Dr. Jim Madden to finish our series on Plato's The Republic.
The Republic.
Scroll 10. We will, I think, probably do maybe one more just sort of overview summary episode after all this.
Sure.
Then we'll wrap all the episodes up, put them in one nice page so people can just have like the full product of Plato's The Republic by Pat and Jim. So this has been a ton of fun, man.
Fun.
You get the credit for this. This was your idea, so happy we did it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been fun, and also though it's been fun because of Plato, not because of us, right? I mean, it's just that if you can't sit down with this book and dig it, then you're just you're not worth talking to.
Yeah, like you're just not the kind of guy I want to hang out with.
You're not my guy, right?
Yeah,
it's okay.
Fine.
I'm sure someone likes you. It's just not me. So.
Yeah. All right. So book 10, a lot to talk about in book 10. Just a lot of both controversial and spooky topics, which I love. Right.
It's spooky, man. Yeah.
Spooky, both controversial and spooky, and we'll have some themes here that clearly the student Aristotle isn't going to go on to agree with. Including themes about poetry and tragedy and stuff like that. But let's not skip ahead, Jim. Why don't you start giving us a summary, and we'll just take it as it comes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also though, even on that point there, the level of irony going on in book 10 is pretty thick. Like there's a lot of irony, and I think you have to mistrust Plato in a way as to what he's doing. Like the surface thing is not what's going on.
Yeah,
and I think there's a real clear signal he gave you that I've actually manipulated you through this whole thing in a way. Okay. You thought you were having a dialogue with me, Plato, about what education is. You thought you were with me standing outside philosophizing, but I think in the end he signaled, oh, by the way, I've actually been teaching you. So, right?
Take that. That's 3D chess right on.
Yeah. I think there is some really deep 3D chess going on in this. Okay. So we end book 9 with kind of what we don't expect, with this kind of hedonistic justification of justice. Right. And that's only, I think, because we have this, this like faulty, modern, carnal, sex, drug, and rock and roll, sense of what pleasure is. Right.
Yeah.
And it is interesting that in book 9, Plato has Socrates justify justice as intrinsically worthwhile in terms of its pleasure, right? In terms of its pleasantness, right? And we talked about last time how, like, what is it for something to be pleasant? It means that you don't regret being in the moment with it, that you're at rest with it in a way. Okay, and that will be a big thing for Aristotle too. And I think it's also, I think it's in the Protagoras, Plato there too also has Socrates argue for the good as pleasure. Okay. And we hear that and we think, what? He's a utilitarian? No. Although John Stuart Mill reproduces the argument from book 9 of the Republic at the beginning of utilitarianism. Yeah, which is interesting. But anyway, so we get this justification. So at that point, I think Plato thinks, Socrates has given us an answer to the question of what makes justice worthwhile in and of itself, right? And it's because it's the most pleasant state you can be in. It is inherently pleasant to be in justice. And if you don't, if you have to ask, well, what makes it so pleasant, then you can't afford it, right? Because you clearly have not lived enough life yet to have like ascended the dialectical ladder to be just. And only someone who is ascended that dialectical ladder is in a position to compare all 3 types of pleasure.
Excellent. Right. If you have to ask, it shows you really haven't had it, right? Because if you did have it, then you wouldn't have to ask.
Only an unjust person can ask that question. Right?
Exactly.
Which, though, this plays into the overall, I think, political skepticism, practical skepticism of the book, right? In the sense that, and when I say skepticism, I don't mean like we can't know. But what I mean is like pessimism is probably a better word, right? Like you cannot justify justice in and of itself to unjust people, right? Okay, all you could do would be to educate them through this dialectical process, drag them out of the cave, right? But they'll kill you before you do that. So, right. So here we are.
So damn
it. Yeah. Right. Okay. All right. And you think of it though, it is this snotty argument, like to say, well, if you can't see why justice is more valuable, that just shows what a brute you are. It just shows like what an unjust person you are. But he
does give supplementary considerations too.
Yeah,
he doesn't just give the argument from experience. But you're right, that is a big one.
Well, but in terms of like what makes it intrinsically worthwhile, that's kind of it, right? Okay, now we're going to get into what makes it extrinsically worthy, right? Okay.
Yeah,
and they're going to kind of dovetail, but also this, just think of what you do with your own children, or even just young people in general. You'll say, yeah, you don't really get what makes this worthwhile.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, yeah. So for my kids this is a great example, right? Is like they don't get it. Like they don't get why. Look, sitting down, doing your math, doing your logic, doing your piano, playing jujitsu. Like I get it. You'd rather be playing video games and stuff. Like you not only don't get it right now, but I don't expect you to get it right now.
Right.
But you stick with this, you will get it. You will get it. And of course, like naturally as a parent, you do try to explain it to them as best as you can, right? So I say, well, look, the reason you will get this eventually is because X, Y, and Z, and what it means to be human. And then just read. Yeah.
But also though, you explain it to them. This is primarily in terms of the external goods, not the internal good. Because it basically, like, the internal good is not available from the external perspective. So if I'm talking to somebody who's outside of it, I can't really articulate it, right?
Yeah.
Now you say, play your piano because it's going to, like, open these other doors for you, right? Or it's going to make you more disciplined, or do your jujitsu because if a bully pushes you around, you can, put him in a heel hook and break his knee or something, right? Okay. But that's not to justify it on its intrinsic merit, right?
Yeah.
And like to get the intrinsic merit, you've got to be in it. You've got to be in it, right? Okay. Anyway, so that brings us to book 10. So we need the extrinsic story, and maybe we'd like a more satisfying intrinsic story too. Okay.
Yeah.
And once again, he comes back and he piles on tragedy again, right? The tragic poets. Okay. And you get what is like one of the weirdest examples in the history of philosophy is this bit about the couch, right? Okay. And in the Reeves translation, I don't know in your translation if it's couch or not, if it's just a piece of furniture, but it begins with this question, like, who, where is the real couch? Is the real couch the sort of idea, the form of couch, what he calls the God knows about the couch, right? And what he probably means there is like what the God associated with couchness, like what the God of the craft would be, right? Because they each, like a furniture maker there's a God of furniture making, right? And so there's like the absolute objective concept of couch as if known by a god, right?
Yeah.
There's what the finite craftsperson knows of it, right? And there's what someone who paints a picture of a couch knows,
right? Yeah.
Right?
And now this is one of my favorite things about this, because like you see here, at least it might not be exactly it. I don't think it is exactly it, but you see the seeds of how later scholastics would start to think about ontological truth, right? And the direction of fit between, when we use the term truth, between how well something corresponds to the divine idea in the real world versus how well our conception or form, relates to the thing in the natural world, right? So it's very cool to see like the seeds of something like that in Plato.
And so Plato says, if you want to know what a couch is, do you ask somebody who paints pictures of couches? Do you ask the carpenter, or do you ask the god? Well, the god's not available, right? So you're going to go to the carpenter.
He's not taking your calls today.
He's not taking calls today, right? And it's obvious you go to the carpenter, right? Because the carpenter actually knows how it works, okay, how to make one. Now, thinking ahead here, a lot of people will say this was a fateful move in philosophy because it sort of made the knowing how to produce something as the normative stance towards it. Okay. Which means we're on our way to this technological nightmare now, right? Where we can't distinguish knowing from being able to produce, right? But for another show, okay. That'll come up when we do more.
Occam, whoever, you're off the hook now. It was Plato's fault. It all went off the rails with Plato.
No, I mean that's actually like when Heidegger critiques the technological society, right? That he thinks this is kind of where
he's going all the way back to Plato.
All the way back, okay. It's like this innocent mistake, but it was a mistake, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, and so what he's doing there is he's destabilizing our willingness to take the poet, the artist, as an authority.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Because they really an imitation of an imitation. Right? They're even further removed.
It's
from
further
the truth.
removed.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's interesting. So back, I think it's book 2 or 3, where he originally took up tragedy, the tragic poets, and said they're out. And it wasn't because of the content of the art, it was because of the form of the art, and it was imitative. Okay.
Yeah.
And here we begin with the discussion of the imitativeness of it, right? And he says, ask Homer what battle he's won. So who is he to tell us about courage? Okay.
It's kind of a funny
it's kind of funny,
yeah.
But here's the thing: is it's funny that he picked Homer. He's talking about tragedy, and he picks Homer, who's not a tragic poet, because Plato knows damn well that Sophocles was a general in the Persian Wars. Okay, so
he's like,
yeah,
make sure I pick my right target here.
Yeah, so like Sophocles was a craftsman of courage, right? Okay. I think Aeschylus, I think he may have been a general. I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up. But anyway, but all the people who acted in the tragedies would have been veterans. It was like part of the deal. You had to be a veteran to do it, right? Okay, so
maybe a little cherry picking going on here.
A little cherry picking going on here, and also like I think Plato's always asking us to see that and to like say, hey, I'm not afraid to admit that I am not the philosopher. Like I too. I fall short. I may be imitating some stuff too here. Okay. So anyway, but then we get this critique of not just the imitative form of tragedy, but the content. What does it imitate? Okay.
Yeah.
And the way I summarize it to my students is the problem with tragedy for Plato is it imitates people losing their shit.
Okay? Makes you kind of pathetic, right?
Yeah, it takes people at their most challenging moments and shows them coming apart. Okay, and I think it's that in the and it's gonna be very important for when we get to the immortality of the soul thing, because it's very like why it's like this chapter of the Republic. It's sort of like you've got 3 things, and why are they all together? It's like he just was in a hurry and he threw 3 things together. Not at all. It fits seamlessly. Okay, so the critique of tragedy in book 10 is that it is typically a depiction of people coming apart under pressure, like something bad has happened and now they're lamenting, right? That the appetitive part of them is not being tamed by the rational part through the spirited part. They are coming to pieces. They are being corrupted, right? And Plato would say, in a literal sense, by something that's happened to them bodily, by something that's happened to them in terms of historical circumstance. Something is going wrong in as an externality, and we are watching human nature unzip itself before our eyes in tragedy. Okay. And he says, we don't want that. We cannot have the guardians reading that sort of thing because they're rehearsing coming undone.
Right. It's like if they just watched, like, I don't know, 10 Things I Hate About You on repeat. This isn't.
Yeah. Or I know, I think it's even stuff that we would see as, and once again, like I think the fact that he does this silly thing by saying, well, what battle did Homer win? But really, like, there's all sorts of poets who have won battles.
Yeah.
Is showing that he's not, I don't think Plato's literally saying we shouldn't show people these plays. Okay. But he wants to, I think this is feeding into the argument about immortality that's coming up here. And I think even take something that we would see as very, very good art. Okay. Usually in that drama, what's going to be depicted is someone coming apart, like someone under like great deal of stress and going to pieces, or at least if it's tragic, it's like they've encountered a stress that they cannot recover from ethically.
You're right. And he thinks that this is going to make the consumer, in a sense, weaker because of it.
It is. And I think for Plato, it is literally rehearsing death.
Yeah. And this is where Aristotle like takes almost the complete opposite direction.
Yeah. Aristotle will say that no, we kind of need to get out of our system.
Right? Yeah.
Or like what Aristotle means by the catharsis of seeing tragedy is unclear. Right.
Yeah.
I think he may even coin the term there. Okay. But it seems like he's saying, no, this actually has a role in education, that we need to see it. We need to, it's sort of like, it's almost like safe sex. Let's just do it in a controlled environment. No one will get hurt. You're going to like want to see some people come apart. Let's do it in the theater where it can be done in good taste. Right. Okay. You know what I mean? It's like the parents who like let their kids have a kegger at their house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But hey, how does that usually work out, though?
Yeah.
Right? Not so well. Anyway, and so, but I think but Plato, the way I look at it is like, because what is death for a Greek? It is corruption, literally being broken apart, coming to pieces. And so what is tragedy? You are watching death being imitated. And in as much as you are being asked, because it's not narrated, to empathize, you have to narrate it. You need to put yourself into the characters, their perspective. You are rehearsing death. You're practicing death. You're practicing corruption. You're practicing disunity, and you're like literally getting a habit of death. Okay.
Yeah. Good.
All right. And so, because it's kind of funny, like, oh yeah, so tragedy's out. Hey, is the soul immortal? Right. I mean, it's like it's a weird transition, but I think it actually fits. Okay. Because then now we get, we get, it's almost as if I forget if it's Animatus or Glaucon. I think it's Glaucon. Says, oh yeah, but what about the reward of justice? Okay. So we go back to the main topic, right? Like Socrates is complaining about tragedy again. Right? Okay. Now we go back to the main topic. And so what happens is we get an argument for the immortality of the soul. And it's strange in, my translation.
Interesting argument, to be sure.
Yeah. It goes by very quickly. It's very short, right? It's very underwhelming. Okay. If you're coming at this, I think looking for something like an argument for substance dualism that you would see in in
Swinburne's book.
Yeah, it's not that. And I think it's actually serving a very, very different kind of purpose too. Okay. So long story short on what the argument is, basically, Plato or Socrates lays out this thesis that, look, if harm to the body doesn't harm the soul, then it would seem that like destruction of the body doesn't entail destruction of the soul. Okay. And what you get is this appeal to the fact that somebody could be suffering the greatest bodily harm, right? Be in the gravest physical circumstances, but yet still maintain the justice of their soul. Like a reason could run it, spirit could obey reason, and then thereby, placate the appetites. Okay. Like the soul could keep its good order even with the complete degradation of the body. Okay. So then it would seem then that the good order of the soul, right, is not inextricably linked to the good order of the body. It goes the other way. Like the disordered soul is going to disorder the body at some point, right? But it doesn't seem that the disordered body is going to like necessarily mean the soul will be disordered, because you can keep it together even in the tragic circumstance.
Yeah, right.
Did you see that? Okay. And so what is the soul for Plato or any Greek? It is the unifying principle of the parts, right? Okay. It is the oneness of the organism. It's the non-corruptibility, the non-corruption thus far, maybe, of the organism. Okay. And what Plato is saying is, in a just soul, it will keep its good order even when the body is being corrupted. Okay. So, and when does it do that? It's when its order is the order of justice, it itself, the form, when it is ordered to the good, right? It is incorruptible in this sense. It won't lose its orientation. It is stable. Okay. And think about how, going back to the political books, in the kind of the last third of the Republic, right? What's the problem with everything but the aristocratic arrangement? It's unstable. It is going towards degeneration. It is constantly affected by externalities, right? Whereas the aristocratic regime is stable. It will stay in place, right?
Right.
And it's not subject to nothing can corrupt it from the outside. Okay. So I don't see what we're getting here is something like an argument for the survival of individual consciousness or something like that, right? I think what we're getting here is this argument that in as much as your soul is ordered to justice, it is stable, right?
Yeah.
And it is stable in the sense that you will keep it together, right? And whatever you face, you can face it with equanimity, right? With complete equanimity, because you're ordered to something that transcends all of these possible tragic circumstances. Right. Right. And that, I think for Plato, I think that's what immortality is, right? Literally your form has become the form, right? The form of being or goodness or whatever. Right. Okay. And then we get the myth, right?
And then we get the myth, right?
Yeah. But you can see now, like, okay, so have we justified justice in its intrinsic nature? Yeah. It's the most pleasurable thing. And if you have to ask, well, sorry. Okay. You don't get it. Okay. And we've justified it in the external, right? In that it is what will give you absolute stability.
Yeah.
It was what will give you an actual life, right? Not just merely an accident, right?
Mm-hmm.
And okay, now and then we get the myth, right? Now,
yeah, and this is where things get fun.
Yeah, and yeah, it's we're talking like spooky mushroom trip kind of myth here, like all of Plato's myths, right?
That has like very interesting parallels to Dante and some
Yeah,
other stuff, and like
yeah,
contemporary near-death experiences and all.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, seriously, yeah, all of them. Like it's sort of like
Right.
spooky. Yeah, well, they were not afraid of good time either. But okay, so the thing. Okay, here's the thing. I find really cool about this is I forget which book it was. It might have been back in book 2 or book 3.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things Plato says about the education of the guardian is they're going to need to be told good lies about the afterlife.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what are we getting here? We're getting a good lie about the afterlife.
Yeah.
Right?
The noble lie returns. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But we're being told one. It's not just like we were talking about telling people noble lies. Now we're being told one. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point in this book, we transitioned from having a conversation with Plato about education to now we're the objects of his educative effort.
Yeah.
You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think that's really cool because he shows, aha, I tricked you. I have been teaching you. You thought we were having a conversation, but I've been dragging you around just like
I've been working my voodoo this entire
I've been working my
time.
voodoo all the time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And also I think you have to like really see that he is not asking you to take this literally because he's already told you part of education is that we tell good lies about the afterlife, right? Okay.
Right. Which it, like in a sense, like always makes you wonder how self-defeating that is, right? Because like if I'm Plato's student, I'm the skeptic, like immediately you've given me grounds to distrust you on multiple things, right? So
yeah, like, no, I think Plato is really slippery and like what is he really doing? Okay, but but it's a good lie. It's a lie because he's not saying this happened or is going to happen in some literal sense.
Yeah. So So let me ask you this:
the inner truth to it. Yeah.
When we talk about noble lie, right? Is that the best translation, or do we want to say like noble myth in a more broad sense?
Yeah.
In the sense that like, well, we'll take how certain scholars think of Genesis, right? Of like mytho-history, right? It's like, in fact, Bill Craig just has a book out on this, right? In the quest for historical Adam and Eve. And he's making the argument for mytho-history of chapters 1 to 11. And the idea there is like, yeah, like we don't take this literalistically, but there are still like real truths embedded in here, right? Real truths embedded in here. So it's not a lie, even if we wouldn't take it in the most wooden sense, right?
So, but I think for Plato to do with Genesis, what Plato is doing with the myth of is you'd have to say there really was no such person as Adam. There really was no such person as Eve.
Okay, so then so you're erasing any elements of like
literal
truth from it, right? Rather than just saying the literal truths might be articulated in certain ways and embellished in other ways, or painted.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It is a piece of fiction told to provide us with a metaphorical understanding of what is really beyond our ken.
Yeah, so that's like take the myth of right? And this is just a genuine question for you, good doctor. I mean, one way that it could be said is like, hey, here's a myth about the afterlife, and it provides good salient lessons for why justice is important, even for its consequences. But it may also be true. Right. But it may also be true. Right. Or this is or the alternative is this is definitely not true, but it provides a useful illustration for this life. You see, and like depending which one of those you take, obviously, I think for even Plato's pedagogical method, I think the former is going to be more valuable because it would reduce a sort of inherent self-defeating skepticism. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I agree. Unless though he thinks the mythological stage is like a ladder that has to be pushed away at some point.
Sure.
Right. You know what I mean? And it's interesting. I don't know anything about the Greek. Okay, but it seems like every translation I've seen of like book 2 or 3 this comes up, they call them lies. They don't call them myths. Right? So
no, I know. Yeah.
Like Plato had a choice of words he could go with there, and he went lie, right?
And I've never seen noble myth. I just threw that out there as a genuine curiosity.
Curiosity too. But and he tells an even spookier myth about the afterlife at the end of the Phaedo, and then after he tells the myth there, or has Socrates tell it, Socrates actually says, only a fool would insist on the truth of this, but it teaches us something, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
so I think like, practical or popular, like mythical religion, right? For Plato is something that ladder will be pushed away once one has like achieved something.
Yeah.
It's a pedagogical device to be gotten to, and so so I don't think he has that skeptical problem there. Then do you know what I mean? Like, are you lying to me? Because like once you've realized the myth wasn't true, you would understand the pedagogical necessity of being told this, right? And you've seen the inner truth of it or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
But I tell you, I think there's all sorts of points throughout this book that you should be asking Plato, what are you doing to
Yeah, and that's just the big point for me, because the other thing that kind of like makes you wonder if myth might be a better way of seeing it rather than just lie is there's like when you actually read the myth of error, there's just a lot of like details in here that like and maybe this is just me not being enough of a Plato scholar of like what are they serving if this is just a myth to be pushed away?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think,
and like we could go through some of those details, but like,
no,
people coming back as animals and stuff like that,
And I think all of it probably is grounded in cultural significance for a Greek.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he's pulling tropes from all sorts of stories.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that there can't be. I'm just saying that just strikes me as something like this. This actually strikes me. The reason I bring it up is like in some near-death experience research, they'll actually reference the myth of error and say like, look, this actually seems like it might plausibly have been, because they'll say like, look at all these consistent details that are given. So like, maybe this is a myth, but it's a myth grounded in some experience that some dude actually had.
Well, it might well be. I mean, like it might well.
And this is just conjecture on my point.
I mean, but like all these guys would have gone, as soon as they, like got, I think like around 30, and they would have gone and done the Eleusinian Mysteries, right? Which we know now is pretty much a mushroom trip. And like people have looked at the content of these things and it sounds a lot like that. Like they're kind of referring back to that. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But also though, I think Plato is not into first order subjective experience, right? And like the point, like the overwhelming sweep of the book is to get over the many for the sake of the one. Right?
Do
you know what I mean? And so I think to think of what Plato has in mind for immortality is something like me as an individual maintaining my personality, and it doesn't fit well with the overall sweep of what the eternal is for Plato. It is just the unification of things, right?
Right on. Good. Right. Okay. Yeah.
And interesting stuff in that myth. Okay, there's tons of weird tropes in there, right?
Right.
But like he's a just guy. He was brave. He died in battle. Okay. And they're going to burn the bodies after 10 days, and it turns out he's alive, right? Yeah, exactly, right. I think like Peg is like, oh man, your guy was dead for 3 days, our guy was dead for over a week, look at us, right? And so and then it's interesting, he comes back and he remembers where he went while he was dead. Okay. And so it's pretty conventional trip through Hades. It's a long hard trip for everybody but has an easy time of the trip. So the trip into death and back is easy for but it's not easy for anyone else. Okay.
Right.
And they get there, they stand before the fates and a judge, and the judge says, okay, now here's where it happened. Like, we're going to randomly let you choose your life. Okay.
Right.
For when you go back. Okay. And it's by lot. It's by lot. Okay. And what the upshot of it is if you're just, it doesn't matter which life you choose, right? Because your justice is stable, right? And so whatever life you choose, you're going to come out on the mark, right? You see what I mean? And it's the unjust who like try to pick the best life looking at it from the outside, right? And they end up like with the greatest tyranny and the greatest trap, and they fall back into it. Do you see that? Okay. So I find it's interesting. So Plato's like saying here, I think none of us decide how good our parents are, right? None of us decide, whether we're good looking or whether, like there's all these fate, tragedy gets a vote in how things go.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, except in the most extreme circumstances, one can still end up perfectly just if they have a just soul, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they are ordered to justice itself, or to the good itself, right? And so you get a lottery of lives, okay? But is it just a lottery? No, it's not, right? Because what you do with the results of the lottery is, if for Plato, it seems to be within your power to keep yourself on the track of justice or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I find fascinating and spooky, I don't quite know what to make of, is then what happens? We get the lottery of lives, right? Then everybody takes a nap by the river of forgetfulness, and they have to drink the water, so they forget, right? And then they go back to life, right? Having forgotten where they've been. And think of, for Plato, like all the metaphors of memory throughout all the stuff he wrote, right? That really what we're doing is we're just remembering. We're just remembering.
Right.
Right?
Recollecting. Mm-hmm.
Recollecting what has been before our eyes all along, right? And I think what we're recollecting is what matters is justice.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it doesn't matter your circumstance, doesn't matter the tragedy you're enduring. What matters is justice. That is immortality, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is goes back with complete memory. He doesn't have to recollect. He just knows.
Mm-hmm.
He just knows, and he's the one just man.
The one just man. That's right.
Yeah,
yep.
And or at least, I mean, he doesn't say he's just, but okay. And what I find interesting in the very last lines of the dialogue, like we're told that, you know, this justice, you know, we've justified it in itself because it's pleasurable, and it is what will make our 1,000-year journey, right, there and back, right, the easiest for us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The 1,000-year journey is the crossing the river Styx, right? Like crossing the threshold to death and like returning to life, and so I think what we're getting here is this sort of like what immortality is in this vision is that complete equanimity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Such that even death does not flap you because you are so ordered to the good, circumstances don't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Beautiful. We did it.
We did it, man. We did
it. Yeah. All Plato's Republic done, gentle listeners. So
10 episodes, man.
Yeah, man, that was good. That was fun. So yeah, why don't we see if there's any questions? If you guys have any comments or questions, we'll finish up with that.
It is like we did sustain a 10 episode series. It's pretty...
I think that's cool. I mean, we just said, hey, we're going to do this, and we got it done. And that's just the way things are here. Philosophy of the people. Colin has a comment. He says, read the dialogue with Gorgias seems to inform my understanding of the Republic. Not sure I would understand the full context of the Republic without Plato's other works. I think that's a very insightful comment.
Yeah, agree. Gorgias is the Gorgias in a lot of ways is like Republic light.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And the question of the Gorgias is, you know, like what Socrates says this crazy thing that triggers Gorgias and his guys, right? Which is the worst thing that could ever happen to someone is that they would be unjust and get away with it. And so this is attempt to justify justice again in this way, right? Mm-hmm. And Thrasymachus is there, right? You know, so a lot of the guys from this dialogue, right? All the people that Plato's brothers were feuding with are there.
All the boys.
All the
boys are there.
Back before we killed each other.
Yeah. Brendan says, why is disorder bad for the soul? Because the soul's perfection comes by way of its order? Question mark.
I mean, I think it's the soul is order, right? Like what a soul is the order of the parts of a body, right? Mm-hmm. For the Greeks. And so like disorder of the soul is the very dissolution of the soul, right? And the degree to which the soul is ordered to one thing and one thing alone is the degree to which that the soul is, right? But the Plato said that's the degree that anything is the degree that it is ordered to one thing and one thing alone. Yeah.
Sweet. So what do we want to do here, Jim? Do we want to do another separate episode to just kind of give overview thoughts on this? I mean, my mind is spinning around on many of these different themes.
Sure. We could do an episode where like what are Pat and Jim's big takeaway from this reading of the Republic.
I think that would be good. Yeah, because it is one of those things that every time you revisit it, you come out with something new, a different insight, or even maybe a completely different take. Sometimes, that's probably been more the case for me, where how I look at this now versus how I looked at it, I don't know, when I was first introduced to it as an undergrad is just completely different, right?
I mean, I think as an undergrad, I didn't get it at all. I think.
Does anybody?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And do they even care? Like when I was an undergrad, I didn't care about it.
I think in the interim between now and then, when I read it, I think I was trying very hard to turn Plato into a Christian, right?
Sure.
And I think now it's one of the no one ever really pulls it off, but I think I'm letting Plato be on his own terms better than I ever have before.
Yeah, letting Plato be Plato. Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. All right. Well, we'll do the summary episode on that. We are also going to start our series on MACUSA. That's are we going to do the whole book, or are we going to do some selected readings? What do we want to do with that one? You know best for this.
I'm all for doing the whole book, simply because, like, as you'll see, I'm gonna like the early parts of that book, okay, but then if we don't hit the late parts, I feel like we're letting
Got it. Yeah, good.
Pretty
good,
rotten character off too easily, right?
Yeah. Perfect.
Right. You know, and I don't know. I mean, and it's not as extensive, right? I mean, yeah. So I would say we do it, but once again, if we don't think it's worth the whole trip, then we don't. You know, we can always.
Yeah, we're gonna do it. We're gonna sit down. I mean, it's gonna be a nice contrast to what we just did in many ways, but I'm sure there'll be some overlapping themes as well. So
now for something completely different.
Right? To be sure. So in the meantime, a few announcements, gentle listeners. The MACUSA series will probably, I'm thinking that might just be featured exclusively on the Philosophy for the People channel. That might be our first exclusive. So if you're not already subscribed to that channel, the link is now in the comments. Please do so. Over time, there will be more exclusive content there, and then eventually all the philosophy content will just be on that channel. So make your way over there if you dig this sort of stuff. Any announcements on your end, Jim, before we wrap this up?
Nope, nothing coming.
All right.
But will this be in the VIP, section for the philosophy channel, or the markers? So.
we will occasionally have to sell at a very high price some special some backstage passes, the after party.
I think it should be just you playing guitar then.
Yeah, dude, I got it right here, man. Yeah,
I'll just be telling dirty jokes or something.
Yeah, I'll play guitar. Jim will tell dirty jokes. Hit that like button, gentle listeners. Subscribe, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.